You are listening to Nicholas Acosta with Downtown Expert Realty in Orlando, Florida. Host of the podcast, Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Nick sits down with guests to talk about how real estate works. You can check out his podcast at www.downtown.expert or 407-508-8809. Facebook and Instagram at downtown.expert. Enjoy the episode.
Hey there, everybody. This is Nicholas Acosta, host of the podcast, Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Joining you live today from beautiful Kissimmee, Florida. Actually here at my one listing. I had a showing this morning at 10 and I have another one tomorrow morning. We should be reaching an offer shortly. And today, as always, we're joined by Mike Synthetic, President and CEO of Blanchard Insurance, and they are our paid advertiser of the show. Mike, good morning. How's it going there, sir?
Hey, great, Nick. How are you doing this morning?
Doing great. Like I was saying, over here in Kissimmee this time. Normally I'm in the home studio, so to speak, in downtown Orlando. But I had which is a good thing, I had a showing here, so I'm doing the show from here. And then also I'm grateful for you guys being able to reschedule and work with my schedule here, because yesterday I had another showing as well that conflicted with the time. So I do appreciate your guys' cooperation over there at Blanchard Insurance.
Yeah, no worries at all.
Awesome, man. So how's it going? So basically today, I know we were going to talk about, for everybody listening out there, we were going to talk about why it's important to have a good insurance company and insurance agent on your side when it comes, like on your team, so to speak, when it comes to being a real estate agent and knowing who to like a referral for buyers and sellers out there. So, Mike, can we talk about that today?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess there's as me and Nick were discussing pre-show, and I've thought about this a lot lately because we've been doing some, branding and whatnot. And one of the things that, we've noticed when we are, talking to real estate partners and people in the mortgage space and title space, so anybody really involved in the real estate transaction side of things, we've said, what can we tell them to look for, whether they are partnering, with an agency brokerage like ours or, somebody else out there as well. And we narrowed it down really to three key factors that we think are very important that an agent nowadays in today's market should look for. And number one is, and probably the most important of them all in order of importance, would be experience. And the reason I say that right now is in this hard market that everybody's experiencing right now, especially here in Central Florida, where it's, insurance rates are going through the roof in regards to homeowners insurance. It's very difficult to get homeowners insurance, and, we're having roofing issues and, and whatnot. So newer agents sometimes don't have the experience of being through a market like this and being able to navigate it. The last time I think we really saw a market or something that is very comparative to what we have right now is probably back in 2006. And the reason for that is because we came off a couple of years of 2004, 2005, which everybody knows were very bad storm seasons here in Central Florida. It literally crippled, impacted the real estate market, but it really crippled the insurance industry. So when you have an agent who's been through a market in a time like that, it's invaluable experience, and that they can draw on that to, and apply into a very similar market that we're, going through today. So I'd say that is, one of the most important factors. And and ask, when you're working with agents too, ask them about that. How many hurricanes have you been through? How many claims have you resolved? How long have you had your licensure? How long have you been partnered with the carriers you work with? Even your former employer there, Nick, at Progressive. I mean, we've been with Progressive, going back to the early 2000s. So we have a relationship with a carrier like that. And that's very important too. Not just, hey, my name is Mike. I've had a license for 1 year and I have a relationship with this carrier for 1 year. I wouldn't really have a lot of experience in the market. Number two, as we were talking about again in pre-show, is one of the next important thing I would say is reviews. And when I'm talking about reviews, I'm not talking about what some agent, insurance agent puts up on their website or whatnot. I'm talking about real, authentic Google interviews.
Right.
And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking, two things to look for are how many reviews do they have? And you can tell how important these reviews and how important, their clients are to them by looking at the mere amount of reviews. I mean, if you're looking at an insurance agency and they've been around for 25 years and they have 5 Google reviews, you just got to kind of look at that and question, like, well, how much effort are they really putting into finding out what their clients think about them, what their clients are saying about them? How important is that to them? And so volume is important, but it's also very important to look at what their clients are saying in the reviews. And you got to look for other keywords besides like saved me money or cheap, or look for things that are like responsive. Look for things, the keywords like claims, service, went above and beyond. I think those are actually more important than just saving a client money. And look for things like where, like especially on claims, where did this agency and where did this agent get me out of a jam? How did they go above and beyond and help me? So I think it's really important to see things like that. And if they have a negative review here and there, I mean, don't shy away from that. As everybody knows, I mean, like, there are more negative reviews out there than positive reviews in any business, especially with insurance companies and the insurance industry in general. So it's always also how they handle those comments. So if they got 1 or 2 in there, see how they respond, see how they try to fix an issue. That's just as important as well. And number 3, the last thing that we really came up with is, and what we call around here is the grind. And what I mean by that is, how hard is your insurance agent working for you? And as we all know, everything is out there in social media land these days. And even when I go to work with somebody, whether it's a new person, agent coming to work for us, whether it's a lender I decide to work with, or whether it's a new accountant I decide to work with, you better believe that I actually go out there and look on social media and look on LinkedIn and look everywhere, because I want to see like who I'm working with, but I also want to see how hard they're working for their clients. So I know that's going to be a direct, reflection of what I'm going to, receive as well. And when I'm talking about the grind, I mean, I want you to really look at, are these agents working after 5? Working after banker's hours, or sometimes they working on the weekends, or are they out there playing golf and going fishing, Wednesday through Friday or on the weekends? And I pose the question is, if you ever, especially in real estate, if you're ever getting into the closing table and there's a problem with the insurance at 6 o'clock on a Friday night and something's behind, what are they going to do to fix that problem? I mean, here we always kind of joke around. We're kind of like, on Fridays, it's going to be a late night every Friday, especially before like a holiday weekend. We're here till like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, just making sure there's, especially if it's at the end of the month, trying to get those closings to go through, making sure there's no insurance issues. So that's another thing, again, is to, make sure the grind. So again, those things are just, looking at experience, looking at the reviews online, and looking on social media, and looking how hard they're at that actual insurance agents working for you. Because our job is to not only support your clients, but it's also to support you as the realtor. I mean, you guys are just as important as the clients we're providing the products and services to.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Mike. I mean, it rings true in my head while we're here talking about this to the audience listening and watching today, that it's crucial. I mean, now, especially with the pandemic that we've been going through, and like we were just talking in pre-show as well, and anyone listening out there, Mike and I are talking, how California, which as we know, most people know, is a really strict state when it comes to emissions for vehicles and things like that, environmental stuff, I was reading an article last night that they're talking about rolling back a lot of their openings, like theme parks, for instance, like Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm. And they're telling people that if they get to a certain tier level, I think it was like tier 1 or 2 or tier 3, one of those, that basically, even with that, they would only allow the theme parks in California to open at 25% capacity. And I'm going to tell you right now, and this, I guess we can talk about this too. This is like a liability thing too. Like, for instance, like when you go to Universal Orlando, I'm a pass holder. We're pass holders. And the entire time now, when you walk through the people movers and the walkway that goes from the parking garage to the city walk and all that stuff, back in the day before COVID, they were playing music all the time, like, popular music. But now the entire time you're there, because of legal ramifications and liability, for their insurance, it's a constant recording in English and Spanish talking about face coverage required for guests as well as team members at all times and social distancing. Now, when you go into the theme park, I'm going to be honest, the last time we were just there a few days ago, nobody, in my opinion, is following the 6-foot social distancing rule. No. It looks like everybody was on top of each other. It's almost like here, maybe as Americans or maybe as Floridians, we just kind of like gave up on safety. Yeah. Because they're wearing face covers, but it doesn't really matter if you're on top of each other in a crowd. I'm like, why are we wearing face covers? We might as well take them off, our face covers off now, because nobody's abiding by the distance rule or regulation or whatever it is. So, yeah, I mean, like, that's why doing these things, like, yeah, they're important. Like Mike was talking about, no matter what, like things like these legal, restrictions in place with social distancing, face covering. But at the same time, and I know people are going to ignore it, but I have to do the same thing because I want to, like Mike was saying, and with insurance too, is that we're here to do whatever it can be above and beyond. We're not going to just tell you we're above and beyond, or that we have, the days of saying you have superior customer service. That doesn't exist anymore. Nobody cares about that statement. Show me, don't tell me.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So exactly, and when it comes to my real estate, yes, I'm legally, I'm a responsible person anyhow, so I'm going to put COVID-19 procedures in place like they do at the theme parks. But at the same time, I'm going to go above and beyond that guideline or whatever the minimum requirements is, like for the CDC, for instance, for disease control, because I want to make sure that I'm safe, my family's safe, and ultimately that the clients that come through open houses or showings like I have today, that I'm monitoring the situation from afar, but still close enough to make sure everybody's in compliance with those guidelines, because I don't want to risk anybody's life because somebody decided at the last second, oh, I don't need to wear a mask here, or I don't need to do this, I don't need to wash my hands, I'm going to touch all the doors, all the windows, all the light switches. No, we're not doing that, because we're looking out, one, for your safety, and then also the seller's safety, my safety, the other buyer's agent, or the buyer's agent's safety, anybody's safety. So this is just going into like business in general, that this is a time not to pull back from protecting people in many ways besides things like a virus, but in every single way. Like we were talking, you and I, Mike, but we can talk about that too, about how I read an article last night. I think it was like NBCnews.com or one of those, or linked, or I think it was on LinkedIn or something. It was basically talking about how, you got to, what was I going to tell you? It was basically saying that this is also a time where, like, even as a buyer's agent and then even in the insurance industry, to let people know, be very careful who you send your information to in terms of like banking information, Social Security, because we've already had this issue before COVID, but there's a lot of opportunists out there right now that are going to be coming after you. And I'm sure you guys have over at Blanchard Insurance, like with businesses and all that, is there a kind of like coverage that you guys offer, a product that covers things like, people that, theft of like identities, or, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it even goes all the way down to the renter's insurance policy, right, which they call the HO4. I mean, most of them come with a certain amount of identity theft that is built in there, and usually it's a limited amount. I mean, it's probably like $15,000, and then usually, obviously with your bank, they'll usually provide some form of coverage that's limited, gratis, or maybe even your credit card, provider does as well. But even on your standard homeowners insurance, there is identity theft coverage. Now, when you get into the business insurance side of things, on the standard business owner's policy, yes, there is a limited amount of things like identity coverage, personal injury, which, protects you from, any type of, defamation of character or anything like that. That's built into the policy. But you can also buy enhanced limits on top of that. And I mean, you can buy limits into, up into the millions of dollars. It's just what your budget is and what you think your risk is when you take a look at it. And then you get into more expansive products like cyber liability coverage, and the new one with cyber liability coverage now, which, cyber liability protects, loss of data and everything else, but they're also including what they call social engineering coverage. So social engineering gets more into phishing. It gets more into your emails, protecting you on those. So, different types of scams. And one of the scams that we notice a lot with clients is where, let's say, for example, they go through Microsoft for their email server, in the cloud. Right. And what somebody will do is, phish, and eventually they'll log into the admin and go into, we've seen this, they'll actually, like, let's say they go into mike@blanchardinsurance.com and, get into my email address. Well, what they may do is get in there and create an alias. They may create Mike Tonsetic@blanchardinsurance.com. I will never know unless I go in and check my aliases. And usually everybody, when you own a business, you might have a couple of alias emails in there as well. But what they'll do is they'll get in there. So they're monitoring your email traffic. Every single thing you're getting, they're getting a copy of it. And they'll keep it on there. And what they'll do is they'll steal your email list. They'll try to get into your database and whatnot. And it's something that you're not really even cognizant of. So you have to pay very close attention. The best way in question is obviously when you get an email and somebody has masked their email so it looks like Mike from Blanchard Insurance, and you hit the reply. If it says something on there that's an unfamiliar email, that's the easiest way to identify that somebody's phishing your email or sending you some type of spam with a virus can be included. But again, I mean, you can buy this coverage. It's a relatively new emerging industry, so yes, there are a lot of exclusions, but and now they're incorporating more endorsements. But it's something that every business is going to probably should incorporate at some time.
No, I completely agree with that. That's funny you're talking about the alias things of emails. I've been a victim, I'm sure many people have, of identity theft out there listening, watching today. I believe I got a call. I think it was, let me try to see. So I have an email address. inacostafl@gmail.com. That's my email address I've had since 2007, back when Google required you to, or Gmail required you to get an invitation from a friend to join before it was public, free reign like it is today for the last few years. And I got a call from a lender, or not a lender, but a credit card company, and just said, we want to verify your email address. Is your email address inacostafl and the number 1@gmail.com? Yeah. And I said, absolutely not. Okay, thank you for letting us know. We'll make sure to make a note that this was a fraudulent attempt, because they were trying to create, since the system or Gmail wouldn't allow them to create the username again because it's already in use, as we know, how you can't recreate the same email. So we're talking about, like Mike's talking about, the aliases, that they had to put a 1 after the letter L, after Florida, in order for them to see, we think we're going to trick somebody here. This is a similar email, but not the same email as the original person that we're trying to steal information from.
Yeah, and it's always good. Like our IT routinely gets into our server and checks our emails and go through the entire list to make sure there's no aliases that are set up in there that we may not know about, that are just kind of piggybacking off our emails. That's one thing you can do. And in regards to passwords, I know, there's a bunch of apps out there with passwords. Everybody thinks they have the secret sauce to, get this password that nobody's going to break. I've actually talked to a couple guys who are, very, very smart computer engineers. And I'm talking, these guys went to Ivy League and whatnot. I kind of asked them, what they do for passwords, one time, and they said they basically created their own algorithm to develop their own passwords. And you can read. I'm not going to get into minute detail about it, but it is interesting that they create their passwords using this algorithm. And I'm not talking about they went out and coded an algorithm. It's just something they have. So, for example, their bank, they may say something like, have their mother's maiden name, then type in the name of their bank, and then have a date of birth that changes or something like that. So if they put like 3 or 4 different factors into this algorithm that they have, so it's a password that they don't really have to be. They don't have to have a memory for. They don't have to write it down anywhere. It's just it's almost like a mathematical formula. So they know when they go to log into Bank of America that this is what their password should be. And it's very interesting. So I would behoove anybody to recommend anybody, if something like that, go out there and just find a YouTube tutorial and figure out how to do it, and then you don't really have to keep track of your passwords. And from what they said is that's pretty much one of the most secure ways to do your password.
Oh, you see that? This is actually funny that we're talking about that. That I like how we're talking about this, because we're not going to go. Anybody listen, we're not going to go into any more detail about it, but I always just thought about this when I was doing the broker's course a few months back already, and they were talking about business management as a broker, and talking about like where you're talking about security and like protecting yourself, like people from phishing, hacking, and all that stuff. So there's a website that's called howsecureismypassword.com, and I just typed in some general password just now, and you see at the bottom there it said it would take the computer about 16 hours to figure out the one obviously it's masked what I wrote. I wrote something simple. So if anybody's out there listening, and if you write a simple password, and this is really simple password, I wrote just like a name of a street and a year. I think I put 1910 or something, or 1910. Yeah. And look what it says. A computer system could figure out your password in 16 hours. And there was another one I typed in before I shared the screen, or maybe it was showing on the screen. It said they would be able to figure out the password instantly, like hackers out there. So even though you have those things like you're talking about the algorithms, there is anybody that may not have the ability to spend that kind of money or have the IT in place. I'm talking about on a personal level. Business, I would recommend that you get an IT department or an IT contractor. But personally out there, run your password through this, because, if you make it something like your kid's name and the year you were born, well, a hacker is going to figure out your bank. If you're using that as your bank login password, a hacker is going to figure that out pretty quickly, because they're going to start looking when they go to hack you or look in your information. They're going to try to guess what words or what names you're using and what date of birth you might be using, because they already know that that's the common thing that people will automatically do as a password on their secure things like bank passwords, that is,
Yeah, and I mean, like we've always said, your information is out there whether you like it or not. And if you don't think it is, I mean, look at your Facebook profile, look at your LinkedIn profile. You're talking about, I can, let's say you went to, UCF, and, I can find that on your LinkedIn or on your Facebook page. I can say, well, maybe Knights is included in your password. I can easily find out, what your mother's maiden name is, and, maybe that's incorporated in the password. So all these analytics and all this data, I mean, they're putting into algorithms to be able to figure out your password. So, it is getting, and it's getting more advanced. Technology is getting a lot better. People are getting a lot smarter. And then again, at the same time, simultaneously, people are putting more of their information out there as well, which makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I tell people, it's funny that we talk about that too, about information out there. I think there's an option in Facebook. I mean, I don't know how truly it would get rid of your information from Facebook, but there's like something in settings now that your Facebook profile plan upon your death, like to basically close down your page or your group or whatever. And I'm like, well, I don't even think if you did that, even if you did that, your information is still out there, because it's out there everywhere anyhow. So exactly. I mean, it's just, I know, it's crazy. And there was another thing I was going to talk to you, and I know we have like 6 more minutes left, but I guess we could talk about this. So when I was first in real estate, this is the perfect topic to talk about real estate brokers out there that own their own brokerages, or even real estate agents out there. When I first got into business over 2 years ago now, and I just passed my real estate sales associate license course, and also the test for the state. I started with a brokerage, and they had mentioned to me from their IT department, and maybe you guys, I'm sure you guys maybe have a product for insurance like this over there, because we talk about like the social media protection and all that. It basically said, in order to use your email, your personal Gmail as a way to, as a point of contact for a potential buyer or seller out there, right? Because of data being shared, that you had to turn on, if you use Gmail, which they had used Gmail, you had to turn on what was called two-step verification, which I have on. Yeah. And their errors and omissions insurance for that brokerage said they would only protect your independent contractor's email address if they had two-step factor authentication turned on. If you did not, you would not be protected by errors and omissions insurance out there.
Yeah, it's getting more stringent when you look at it. I mean, talking about errors and omissions and talking about cyber liability and any type of insurance, in general right now. And this is and it has to do right now too with the pandemic, with COVID and everything, because, hacking and cyber risk is going through the roof because of it. Because they know, more people are at home, more people are working remotely, and inherently more people are using their, private emails to do business and whatnot. And it's right. Crazy. And I mean, to tie along with that, I mean, I just kind of noticed with an analyst brain that I have, I kind of noticed a trend the other day that I was looking in some, job networks, and I stumbled upon a kind of an anomaly that I would have never thought of unless I, found this, but it was a bunch of out of work human resources people. And I was like, gosh, 9 out of these 10, or 9 out of these 10 resumes are human resources people. And I'm talking from the executive level all the way down to, HR specialists, kind of at the ground level. And I was thinking about it, and I was going, well, it kind of makes sense. Well, if you have these, giant corporations, like Disney that are, furloughing and laying off, thousands of people, then, why do you need this huge HR staff? And then I started thinking about, these companies who have gotten rid of their infrastructures. For example, most recently Nationwide, where they were kind of like, everybody's going to work remotely from home. We're getting rid of our internal infrastructure. Nobody's coming to the office, not anymore. And I was like, well, there's a big downsize on the HR department there because, Mike's no longer in the office, cursing, at the top of his lungs, and right. Nick's not in there, doing questionable things. So why do and so I think a lot of these companies now are kind of looking at it going out of sight, out of mind. Because that's really a lot of the HR people. I mean, a lot of the stuff that, as far as paperwork and compliance, I mean, that's so automated these days. And right. They have HR platforms that do all that, and, AI incorporated and whatnot. So really the HR person's role was, conflict resolution. Well, now the companies are going, well, as long as Mike's getting his work done at home, who cares if he's yelling, dropping F-bombs at the top of his lungs, beating on his dogs? Out of sight, out of mind. It's not a liability anymore. But what I'm trying to do is tie it around and say that also the employee is putting the company in more jeopardy at the same time, because who knows what they're doing? I mean, are they looking at social media on a secure network? Are they using their personal email as well as their work email? So yes, now, and wrapping around to answer your question, I think that's going to, as you know, when in the insurance business, when the risk becomes adverse, and what I mean is when the risk becomes too much for a company to handle, what's the first thing that insurance company does is they start excluding coverage. They started putting exclusions on there because it becomes not only unprofitable for the insurance company because everybody's in it for business, but also it puts them in a situation where they're not going to be, affected adversely, just like we have the roofs in Central Florida right now, where it's kind of like the insurance companies are paying out $1.29 in claims on average for every dollar they're taking in. Well, I mean, is that a wise investment? No. So yes, you are going to see a lot of that, and paperwork change. So when people are getting the renewal, especially in real estate and title and mortgage and even insurance, their errors and omissions, it's a good thing to actually review your renewals coming up over the next couple of years, as well as your cyber liability products, because you won't notice it. And it's just like, as you know, coming from this business, everybody takes their policy, including myself. You throw it in a drawer, you throw it in the trash, you don't read it, because the insurance companies have a tendency to make it 200 pages. You know why? They don't want you reading all of it. They don't want you to know every exclusion in there. Why would they want you to know that here are some outs for them and opportunities for them to get out of a claim? They don't want you to question it. But it's a good time. And when you don't understand, have somebody review it, because I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and literally part of my job is it's another language, and I have to act like a translator half the time.
Well, I agree. And same thing here with real estate. Anybody out there, you need somebody like myself or anybody out there that's real estate, and then like Mike with insurance. And my analytical brain, and this is why we get along so well on this podcast, Mike, is I was thinking about it too. Like, just because they've downsized human resources department, for instance, like Nationwide has said we're working from home only now, no more in the office. They still have to review their insurance policies or HR policies, because coworkers probably are more likely.
Exactly.
They're more likely to commit inappropriate behavior when they work remotely.
Absolutely.
Because there's nobody looking over their shoulder anymore in an office.
Yeah, it's really a catch-22, and
right.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens down the long run, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, are you going to see employees getting in trouble outside of work? Like, hey, let's say, and ironically, am I sitting here, working for my real estate brokerage, and on another screen, I'm actually a hacker, so I'm breaking into the email simultaneously. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years. Am I running, Fancy Bear at Russian hacking on one computer and selling insurance on the other? Nobody knows. I mean, because again, it's out of control. But like I said, a lot of the companies, and going back really quickly before we, sign off here, you brought up a good point earlier where you're talking about walking around Disney with, getting rid of the music, telling you where to mask, wash your hands, use the bathroom, every 5 seconds coming over the loudspeaker. I actually was having a conversation about this last night, and, because everybody's confused right now. Who do you believe? Do you believe the politicians about COVID? Do you believe the CDC about COVID? Do you believe Fauci, Sanjay Gupta? Nobody knows what to believe because there's so much information out there. And I thought, and I'm sitting there watching a Disney commercial, mind you, and I'm like, okay, the little kid's got his masks, he's running around the parks, and then I see another commercial, and I think it was an insurance commercial, and the people are having masks, and you're seeing more of these commercials incorporate people wearing masks and social distancing and safety. And I started thinking, and I'm like, who probably has the answers to all this? And it's probably Disney, it's probably Amazon, it's probably the travel industry. They probably know what the long-term effects of COVID are going to be. They probably know when it's going to be resolved, hopefully when it does get resolved, inoculations and whatnot. You know why? Because Disney has enough money to go out there and hire the smartest people in the world to figure this out. And people probably think, these guys are smart working at the CDC and in politics and whatnot. Yeah, they're not making as much. I mean, Amazon can go out there and pay a guy $1 billion to find the answer or hire a team of people. And believe me, in my opinion, they are probably well ahead of everybody else. So I would say, pay attention to what companies like Disney and Amazon and everybody else are doing, what they're trending, and you'll probably have a better idea of what the outcome of COVID is going to be, better than watching the news. I mean, that's just I'm not saying don't watch news, but that's just my personal opinion that I kind of was an idea I was kind of thinking about last night, and watching more of these commercials. I mean, the travel industry, for example, they're selling reservations now for cruises in May. They're not taking those steps to being foolhardy and just insane. I mean, they have paying a lot of people to process those analytics, to look at that, and probably paying these people millions upon millions of dollars.
No, I agree, Mike. That's awesome that we talked about that part, because I agree that there's, anybody out there think that, why are they being so risky in opening the theme parks? I'm sure Disney, Universal, the cruise lines, their insurance policies, they've had to pay people, like you said, to do research.
Yes.
Like a lot of money. And on top of it, they're not going to be open. They wouldn't be able to open the theme parks like they have in Florida unless their insurance company, the policy that they have for the insurance, said you're okay as long as you follow these guidelines that we mandate. You're okay to open. And if you don't follow these, they have those on the loudspeaker all the time, because as soon as somebody messes up, and whether it be a team member or a guest or whatever that's at the park, the insurance company is going to be like, sorry, you have to shut down until you correct your guidelines and make sure that the employees and that the team members and staff enforce these rules on everyone, no exceptions whatsoever. Because if we're not reopening your park and we're not going to carry your policy if you can't follow these guidelines 100%.
Yeah, I'm gonna be watching my Amazon driver. With the day he stops wearing his mask, I'm gonna be like, things are getting better.
Oh, yeah.
Because Amazon probably knows more than we all know. Probably knows
Right.
more than the government knows.
Of course, I mean that's what I agree with you 100%. That's what I've been watching, the big corporations like that, like Amazon and Disney, as a way to even model my brokerage after,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
for safety for everybody. Because if those big companies that are worth billions of dollars, they start taking their face covers off and they all start working in the office again, we know we're safe again.
Exactly.
All right, Mike. Well, thank you again for being on short notice, getting with me on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. As far as we know, next week we're going to be back again Tuesday next week with Blanchard Insurance, a paid sponsor of the show. Mike, very much thank you again for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
All right, guys. Well, this has been Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast, coming to you live from beautiful Kissimmee, Florida. I'm only 10 minutes to Disney World theme parks with my beautiful listing at 4985 Bond Street West, Kissimmee, Florida. Now listed with a price improvement, now at $249,000 even. This house will not last long, so make your move today, because we've had a showing every single day this week. So anybody that thinks that the real estate market slowed down because of COVID, you're absolutely wrong. Right, Mike? And same with insurance. It doesn't slow down one bit for us.
No, and there's some good. I mean, I'm not a realtor, not a broker, but some of the deals I've been seeing out there are really good. It's actually made me take a look and go, should I be putting my house in the market and looking? There are some good deals out there right now.
Definitely. All right, guys. Well, thank you, Mike, and everybody for watching. This has been Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. I'm Nicholas Acosta, a licensed real estate broker here in Florida with Downtown Expert Realty, LLC, 407-508-8809 or downtown.expert. See you guys next week. And Mike, I'll talk to you later, man. Have a good day.
Absolutely, man. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Nicholas Acosta with Downtown Expert Realty in Orlando, Florida, and host of the podcast, Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Check out his website, www.downtown.expert or 407-508-8809. Facebook and Instagram at downtown.expert. See you next time.